Skip and I never really suspected that Jesse was deaf. Jesse is a very, very visual child. He completely fooled us. He has always responded.
Bow wow goes the doggy.
There are so many ways now we've discovered that deaf children know that something has changed in the room.
Okay. Yes, is this okay, sweetheart?
A month before his first birthday,
Close the book.
his grandfather finally voiced his fears that there was something wrong.
Oh, dear. We're getting new molars for you.
I had an appointment set up with the otological medical group. As I sat with Jesse and was tested, I really had no idea what was going on. I think the worst fears going through my mind were that he might have to have an operation, and I know that that's how Skip felt, that he might have to have a little operation, tubes would be put in, and whatever the problem would be instantly cleared. Never, in my wildest imagination, was I prepared, or did I expect a diagnosis of deafness.
You want to do it? Here we go. Who is that? A little worm. Uh-oh, Jessie, I hear you. I hear you. There we go. This little worm ate a rose. Yum, 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 yum. Mmm. Oh, you want... Ow! Oh, Jessie, that's my finger. That's not really a worm.
I think at that point I was in simply a state of shock. I was alone in the house with a child who all of a sudden didn't seem like my child. Here was a deaf child who minutes ago, was perfectly normal and happy and healthy, and all of a sudden was somebody who I didn't know.
Papa, say goodnight, Papa. Tell Jesse he's going to bed.
Go Mimi.
Yeah, he's going to bed.
Mimi.
To bed.
Okay,
he's going to bed. Okay.
When Skip came home, he really, I don't think, realized the enormity of the problem. The whole weekend was spent in pondering why and what if and how do we cope and what do we do. Jesse, of course, sailed through the whole weekend. We found out he was deaf on Friday, and on Saturday he walked for the first time. He took his first steps.
I'll give you a toy to play.
We, of course, got on the phone first thing Monday morning and started calling every single place that we could possibly think of associated with deafness. It was a very slow, tedious, horrible process because each time I got on the phone I had to say, I am the mother of a newly diagnosed deaf child, and each time I said it, it would hit me like a thunderbolt.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sarah. Happy birthday to you. Okay.
It takes about 2 or 3 weeks for the shock and disbelief to wear off, and then the ramifications to set in. Well, if he can't hear, he can't talk.
Good. Did you ever hear of a silent birthday? Oh.
What's behind his ears?
Those are hearing aids. Because he can't hear without them. It helps him to hear a little bit. For Jesse.
I think the other shock you get is you assume, well, okay, the kid has a hearing problem. Now if we put the hearing aids on him, like putting on eyeglasses, is going to solve the problem. Well, it doesn't. The sound that he gets through these hearing aids is just greatly amplified and distorted. And he's already a year old, and he's not used to responding to sound.
Well, look at our bastard car. Look at you. You have one of these? Yeah, but mine's faster than that. Yeah. It flies, right?
Finding out that our child was deaf was hard enough, and getting the hearing aids for the child was a tedious and somewhat difficult process. And then we started to realize what the consequences of being deaf were for a small child. And we're astonished to find that there was no central clearinghouse of information on deafness and deaf education for young children. There was no Dr. Spock for the deaf child. I'm a journalist, and I felt like I had to know everything, every option that there was for this child. And, you know, after making several calls and talking to a lot of deaf adults and talking to a lot of professionals, visiting different schools, we finally decided on a method and a way that we wanted to raise Jake and the way in which we wanted to communicate with him.
The worm doesn't have eyes or nose or face.
Mommy!
The worm has an ugly face? Yeah? You think so? Let me see.
And I think it's really necessary for all of us to get a sense of deafness and to understand what it means to be deaf.
Where did he find it?
One of the first things that I did when we found out that Paul was deaf was I went to the largest library I had at my disposal and looked under deafness in the card catalog, and I was a little bit surprised that the number of books was very small. Some of the books are good. I mean, they have good information in them. The thing that you come away realizing, however, is that there's a lot more to be learned than has really been researched up to now. We thought, well, he will not be able to talk with hearing people.
No! I want to count this.
Oh, that's not a pair, no.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah, that counts for two. But he'll be able to learn everything about the world because now just about anything which is known about the world is written somewhere. Right now, Paul is 5. He's starting to learn to read, but we don't know whether eventually he will have a complete fluency in reading English.
Kristen, will you help Mommy set the table? Will you help Mommy set the table, please?
Just about a year ago, it was just when we were starting to, you know, see all the specialists that you see go through all the medical, the audiology, and all that stuff.
Go set the table. Thank
Now
you.
it's just like school in our everyday life. The fact that she's deaf certainly hasn't gone away, but we've gotten used to it. But I continued to work because I felt with all this other stuff going on, I needed to stay in touch with a part of myself. Our family economic situation's been cut back, but that kind of just has to go along with it, I think.
Yeah,
We'll get
you
that.
get ketchup afterwards.
In just a minute.
Okay, come on, say it first.
God is great,
God is good, and we thank Him for our food. Amen. We're supposed to talk to her, and we do, but you have to think of it now, you know. Before it was just talk normally, you just talk to her like you talk to everybody. And now it seems like everything is, you make a point of it.
When Todd was about 4 to 5 years old, we were feeling quite a bit of frustration with the lack of communication that we were having between us and Todd. We spent a great deal of time in one method under the guidance of one kind of professional, and we believed it and we stuck with it, yet it wasn't working and we weren't really realizing what was wrong. If I were to go back and do things over, I would look at the alternatives.
One of the things that I think many parents feel is that they are totally alone. Maybe they never heard about deafness. Maybe they never knew anybody who was deaf, had never seen a hearing aid, had never seen an audiologist or an audiogram. And all these terms and the whole world is new to them. Meet someone else who's going through the same thing. I think that's probably the best thing to do because, as many parents have told me, no one knows what it's like unless you have a hearing impaired child.
the real debate that we're finding among our friends here, among the deaf adults we're meeting, is what do we do as far as sign language goes? Do we do a combination of the auditory approach, the John Tracy oral approach? I mean, that's a controversy that we seem to be battling, and our feelings go back and forth. I mean, I started off very strongly that I wanted to do sign language because I wanted the kid to be able to have the same abilities in abstract and symbolic thought, even through whatever language, sign language or whatever, as his older brother had at the same age.
Precise. Birthday. Birthday. Now, it says born here, but I don't want you to use that for born.
There are times when my husband feels that signing is the way to go because he will get vocabulary and language a lot more quickly. We realize, though, that if he is strictly a signer, he will have trouble going back and forth between the two worlds.
Stuck. Trapped. If you have long nails, spell it.
I, on the other hand, am willing to give the auditory and oral method a chance first.
I hear that. Open. Oh, my goodness.
I think we both agree that because Jessie is so little, we're not losing critical time. Granted, every day for a hearing impaired child is critical, but we feel we have a little time to experiment, to try to give him a chance to use his residual hearing, to try to babble and vocalize. And I think we'll be able to decide in a year or so that yes, he's going to have an opportunity to speak, or no, he won't.
Mama, say it. The goal of Jesse's therapy is to make him aware of sound and to associate the sounds of speech and the sounds that he hears around the home with meaning, and to do it in a consistent and repetitive manner.
Jesse, bye-bye, car.
Bye.
The biggest handicap of deafness is the lack or the inability to communicate, and you want your child to communicate the best possible way. For some children, the oral program is superb. They can lip read and they do just fine. Some children find it very frustrating, and total communication approach is better where they do use sign language.
That line makes his eyes very angry.
But I think you've got to evaluate what your child's needs are and how he is doing in whatever class he is in.
It's a look on his face. Maybe he is dreaming, he is lovesick.
Without good language or good foundation in any language, be it spoken English, spoken Spanish, or sign language, without that good foundation, you're going to have difficulties in communicating with your child. That child's going to have difficulties in learning at home before he or she goes to school, and then after they go to school.
One thing we had to do was, because we decided to use total communication, was that we had to start learning sign language. And because we aren't native signers, there was a certain delay there in terms of when we actually could establish communication with Jacob. And I think no matter what way you go in educating a deaf child, there's probably a delay. For us, I'd say it was over a year before we could actually talk back and forth in the same way that you would with a hearing child of 2 or 3 years old.
Hop, hop, hop.
Hopping.
Now we're moving from hop to pop, working on the ah sound. Look, Jessie, bubbles.
I probably do something almost every day that directly involves Jessie.
Oh, pop.
For instance, Monday, in the evenings, I go to sign language class with my husband. On Tuesday, we go to the John Tracy Clinic. On Wednesday, I have a home demonstration teacher who comes to my home from my school district. On Thursday, I go to a home demonstration class at the John Tracy Clinic. On Friday, I go to the nursery program. On Saturday, I have speech therapy.
Here they come. Here they come. Jessie, pop, pop.
Having a deaf child, you have very little time for yourself, and if you have to work, you probably have no time for yourself. We can do stereo along with...
Oh, pop! 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 Whoa! Whoa! Oopsie! Oopsie!
Oh, I know. When Mommy does it, then you want more. Then I can't put you down. I know. Needless to say, as many times during the day as I possibly can, I try to do little mini lessons with Jessie.
Hot. That's hot over there. Very hot. We're going to put just your spaghetti in. Hot. Feel? Feel? Hot. That's hot.
I probably don't do enough of them. I'm sure that any parent of any deaf child doesn't feel that they ever do enough with their child. And it's just a kind of a guilt trip that one has to get over.
Spaghetti. You want this? Okay, you can have this. This might, you know something, Jessie? This might be hot. That's warm.
You know, you're giving over your child really to experts all the time. The doctors, the audiologists, the teachers. Everybody's supposed to be the expert who knows what you want them to know for your child. And you get conflicting messages. And you also get messages that may be pat messages that may not be specific to your child. So you emerge as the experts. And you may have to be the expert before you feel ready to be the expert. You may have to pick a program, as you said before you even know what constitutes a good program.
He does have hearing starting here at about 80, 85 decibels, and it goes out through these hearing frequencies as we've explained. Evaluating professional opinions in regard to parenting a deaf child can be very difficult. There are many, many options, and professionals do not agree as to the best methods for any given situation. It's therefore important that each parent realize this, and that each parent get differing opinions. This can be confusing, it can be very difficult, but it will lead to the best possible solution for your child's problem, given your situation. No professional can put himself completely into your situation and therefore give you advice which applies best to you. Trust yourself as a parent. You certainly would if your child wasn't deaf. Work with him and work it all out.
I have a rectangle. Looks like this. There's our rectangle. What color is the rectangle? It's, what color is that? What color is that? That's right. What color is that, Matthew? That's right.
When a parent is going to view a program, it's real important that they look for many different things. Class size, the teachers that are available, the children involved in the program, what kinds of language is being given and expected, what kinds of listening skills are being given, and generally high expectations.
I want to look at the worms. I want to look at the worms. I need more language, Matthew.
I think it's important that they view the entire program.
Okay, that was great.
Do they want a social atmosphere? Do they want an academic atmosphere? And what they generally feel that they can be comfortable with and where their child can grow.
No! Is this worm for the frog? Yes, it is. It's for the frog.
Yeah.
I happen to be in physics, and most of the people historically in physics have not spoken English, for example. But, and in fact, many of my colleagues now, they speak English rather poorly. But they have their own identity, they have their own medium in which they think, and they're very successful. So for my child, that's the question, am I giving him, or is he obtaining somewhere input, which is important for his development of general linguistic capabilities, not specifically geared to English, but to his own way of thinking, which is not English, because my child doesn't hear English, and he never will.
Francis, is it all right? Go ahead. I'll give him apple juice and his own crackers. Okay?
We feel that the primary emphasis of our program is really the development of communication skills. When children come to us, most of the time they have no idea what communication is about, that people can exchange ideas, that you can tell somebody something and they can tell you something back and forth. So that's really the emphasis of the program. And the point of whether we go through sign language or we use hearing aids for auditory input or speech, all those things are almost irrelevant. The important thing is to help the child understand what communication is about, so to give them a tool.
I felt that I could not handle Paul on my own. I had problems with him. I was nervous. He was not obedient. He had temper tantrums. Whenever I felt that I couldn't take it anymore, I ran to this classroom. And I watched the teachers. Somehow, the way they treat the children with confidence and love, that rubbed off.
Very good.
After a day in school, I would go home feeling much more confident. And the funny thing, I began to love Paul more. Maybe because I could manage him better.
We're trying to teach Kristen to learn to listen and to use what residual hearing she may get with amplification through the hearing aids and with the cochlear implant. She's in a regular preschool 3 days a week, and we're involved in a public school parent-infant program. Fortunately, we have a real good relationship with that preschool, where we get everybody involved in her educational process together on occasion, and we go and we say, here's what we're doing, and so far it seems to be working out really well. And she's real happy.
Up and down.
I felt when I went from the oral program to the total communication program that I, as a mother, had failed. I hadn't done enough to help my child to lip read. And looking back at it now, I know I did everything I could possibly do. I went through the daily auditory training. I got down on his level. I made sure he looked at my face when I spoke to him. And I would repeat things 2 times and then take him to whatever I was talking about. And a lot of parents will strive towards the lip reading, and sometimes I wonder if maybe the parents aren't striving towards making their child as normal as possible, which is good. You want your children to all be normal.
Which color's inside the washer? Right, red.
But I don't know if it's totally accepting the child's deafness and his handicaps and his limitations. The main thing is to help your child to communicate and feel less frustrated. And whatever works for him is the right program.
What do you do? Why? Why do you do that?
When it comes to a program like we have here, we can find a class where he can fit in. Most important, he will have peer relationships built up, be able to communicate with his own tough group at his own age level, and he can maybe flirt with girls, which is a normal part of growing up, and he might not have at home.
I feel that it is very hard for the deaf people to learn to read. I have to do all I can to teach him. By now he knows how to read about 250 words, so I can write pretty long messages to him. My oldest son could not read 250 words when he was 5 years old, and you have to keep in mind that every word Paul has to remember by heart. He cannot sound out a word, so he has to see each word as a picture. His visual memory is much stronger than that of a normal hearing child. I'm very happy with his progress.
I think you forgot the chair.
I think I forgot something. Number 7.
I think babies in themselves take an inordinate amount of time, and I know Jed had just gotten used to the idea of there was a new baby, and he didn't like him very much initially. He had just finally gotten to the point where he was starting to like him, and things were getting back to normal when we discovered he was deaf. So I think it's a real double whammy for parents who have babies who are deaf and a slightly older child. Once we stopped crying and being hysterical, Jed seemed to calm down. And then, of course, we did try to make special time. But I think even more than the special time, now as I look back on it, I think it's the fact that we accepted it and began to deal with it more positively.
On your mark. Go. Get set. Go.
The trauma was past and a new beginning was beginning. And he sees us now, we're a regular family again.
Okay, let me get this out of the...
When Jacob was diagnosed as deaf, my daughter was a little over 3 years old. And I didn't understand the impact of having all this madness going on around her. And it's just beginning to dawn on me that she has feelings too and that she's reacting to having a deaf brother. When I first met with her teacher, I said, you know, Jacob is deaf, but I would rather that it not be made a big deal here because I think Caitlin needs to have an identity separate from that of being the sister of a deaf brother.
We have a younger child. He's very sensitive about Todd's deafness, and I can remember when he was under 5 years old coming home crying because one of the neighbor kids was teasing about the sounds Todd was making. And we've tried real hard not to make him feel responsible, not to use him as the errand boy to always go and get Todd or always be the one that has to act older, interpret for Todd, be responsible for Todd. Use your voice. Another thing I think that you have to be careful of is not make the child who is hearing feel guilty because he does hear and his brother doesn't hear or his sister doesn't hear.
I think the opportunities for educating a deaf child are much better now than they were, say, 10, 20 years ago. And one reason is because the educational methods are beginning to merge. But there are also problems. And educating handicapped children is very expensive. And I think that, you know, our society has to make a commitment to see that those children have the best education possible.
Yeah, take it off. Oh, Mom. Okay.
Here,
There we
Jesse.
go.
There's the truck. Okay. Remember, Jesse can't hear you now because everything's aids are off.
Here, come here. Come here, let's wrestle. Come on, girl. Come on. Yeah.
Let's wrestle. Bang!
Yeah.
There are days when we disagree, but I think because neither one of us feel we have the answer, and we know that no one has the answer really, we are not hard and fast in any one thing, and we're able to talk about this without arguing or getting angry. Neither one of us feels that that right now there's a right way to go. I wish there was, but there isn't. Our goals for Jesse, of course, are similar. We want him to be happy, well-adjusted, educated, and we hope oral.
What?
It seems like our whole life for so long was just wrapped around deafness. Whether it was going to a meeting, whether it was having testing done, going to a doctor, it was as if our life just stood still for a while. And it's really a shame that you don't take the time to step back and look and be normal.
Very often parents feel that there's not enough time to do everything that they need to do. Not enough time to go to lessons, not enough time to do lessons, not enough time to do anything. Everything has to be a lesson. There'll be more than enough time if you take time for yourself. It's part of life now. It's part of your family. It's part of who you are. You can't make up for lost time, but you can make the best of what you've got ahead of you.